This is Weekend, and I'm Doug Hall. What a pleasure it is to welcome back to this show David Scott Atkinson. David Scott Atkinson was on a little while ago talking about South Africa, but here he's talking about his profession, the public relations profession, because he is the premier public relations practitioner in Canada. Nice to have you on the show, David.
Nice to be here, Doug.
Okay, David, what's it take to be a PR practitioner? Do you need a degree? Do you have to be able to read without moving your lips, or do you have to be able to write, or do you have to be able to drink and bend the elbow?
Well, I suppose all of those do help in the human journey anyway, whatever you decide to do. But it helps, of course, the better educated you are for anything. But the basic qualifications for a public relations practitioner would be analytical thinking, be able to have a great sense of curiosity as to why. I think probably the best example at the moment on the why is why on earth would the Chrysler Automobile Company, for example, allow their managers to drive their cars without attaching the odometers? I mean,
well, that is absolutely criminal, and Lee Iacocca said as much. But I really have profound respect for the man. He must have had superb PR advice, because he stood up there and he took his lumps. He said it was stupid.
Well, there's nothing people really rejoice in more than somebody saying, look, the buck stops here, it's my fault. And what he's done is said, look, I am responsible for this company, and it's a terrible absence of common sense, added to which the common sense is it's fraudulent. I mean, people buy cars believing that they have not been driven.
That would be a PR practitioner's nightmare, though.
I think the way it's been handled is masterly. I'd buy a Chrysler product just on the basis of trust of Mr. Iacocca. I mean, I've never had one, but...
David, how important is trust in the client?
Well, trust in it. Well, it's like all human relationships. You can't really, unless you've got good chemistry between yourself and your client, and you can freely express yourself, and he too, or she. I mean, I do have women clients.
Well, I know that, David. They chase you down the street. We all know that.
Some chaps have it. But, well, basically, you have to have mutual trust, mutual respect. And the first step, you see, is the talents. You have to be able to communicate. You either do it verbally or you do it on paper.
But, David, in my job, I get PR handouts by the ream. I get phone calls saying, hey, I've got a client, boy, would I ever like to get him on your show. I read stuff. Some of it's very poorly written. Some of the practitioners don't know what a deadline is. Some of them don't know what a time to arrive at the studio means, and some of them don't know how to brief their client. And I think to myself, good night. These are supposed to be professionals. On their shingle it says professional public relations practitioner.
Well, I mean, I would not defend them in any way.
And you've seen that, David. You know that.
Constantly. But really, you have to understand the requirements of media. Which, I mean, if you're asking for your public client on your show, for example, it must bestow benefit on you, because it's got to be an interesting subject, and it's got to bestow a benefit upon the audience. I mean, it's got to be entertaining, informative. They say, oh, that's interesting, I'd like to know more about that.
Right, but I'm not here to give them a 30-minute commercial.
Well, I had noticed that. I had actually noticed that. You can be quite nasty on occasion when you're being pushed, and so you should be. You have quite specific demands. You want to inform and entertain.
Exactly. Now, let's come back. There's somebody watching us right now and says, hey, I'd like to get into PR. I think that would be great because you travel, you meet a lot of interesting people, and you just have a nice life. What are the requirements? Now, you've got your own company, David Scott Atkinson Only, and one of the international companies in Canada. You represent around the world. Somebody knocks on your door. I'm going to throw it right back to you. A young boy, a young man, or a young woman come and they knock on your door and they say, I watched you on Weekend, and I'd like to get into public relations. What's your advice?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm really qualified to give any advice.
Well, okay. What would you want to hire somebody? What would you want to hire an eager young man or woman fresh out of high school or university?
Well, sadly enough, we don't hire young people fresh out of university. We have done it. They come out with some fairly fixed ideas. But we have a very specific approach to public relations, and sometimes somebody walks in the door and they have been hired. But basically, you have to determine the story your client has to tell. So in other words, you've got to be a very good interviewer. You have to note the limitations of the story. There's the thing we call corporate bad breath. I mean, that odometer thing was corporate bad breath.
Indeed.
It was worse than that. You have to be able to say to the client, look, if you are polluting the atmosphere, you're going to have to stop doing it. Now, it may be economically not feasible to do it straight away. So you say, announce that you're going to stop polluting the environment and phase it out over a period of 5 years, so you maintain your jobs. You don't fire a whole lot of people while still cleaning up the environment, which is your obligation to society. Now, if you're going into public relations, I mean, my generation, most of us went into public relations from journalism. We were pretty good journalists. I mean, I was a foreign correspondent.
And you still are a superb journalist. You're writing marketing a column all the time.
Well, I still, it's the 3 rules of journalism, you know, rewrite, rewrite, and rewrite.
Sure.
So that it doesn't come easy.
So in other words, let's stop there. Let's talk about journalism just for a moment. The provincial and federal government have a propensity to hire over-the-hill journalists as their information officers in the various ministries.
Well, it's a different principle. They hire them on the basis of the dog they know.
Yeah, but these men and women, they can write, though, David.
Yes, but it isn't enough, because they don't really. You see, they generally, after a couple of years in journalism, you develop a pretty heavy basis of cynicism and disbelief.
All right, is a journalist cynical because they're a journalist, or are they cynical and then become a journalist?
No, they become. Their experience. I mean, they get told an awful lot of lies as a journalist, as you well know.
Indeed.
You get told an awful pack of lies. You're also exposed to enormous cases of social injustice. And you see them very close to the line, and you find this offensive. So you are in a position, if you're permitted by your editors, to become judge and jury of situations which you're ill-qualified to.
All right, should a good journalist, should the David Scott Atkinsons of the world sit in judgment? Now, I've read your columns in marketing, and you say that I can be hard on guests on occasion. You can be pretty hard on various
well, I'm in
people
trouble.
and
I'm in trouble
organizations.
with it at the moment. I mean, the airline stewardesses or waitresses or whatever they call themselves are mad at me because I did a column supporting Ward Airlines and saying that I didn't see anything wrong with seeing that their flight attendants were well turned out, well groomed, and efficient.
Why are they mad at you for saying that?
Well, because I'm supposed to be a sexist, because I refer to mincing males. In actual fact, the mincing males provide excellent service. I mean, if you go on South African Airlines, it's a superb service by mincing males. I mean, you really, and well, I mean, if you look at the restaurant business, the best service you'll ever get is from a mincing male.
Do you want to come up here and answer the door in about 2 weeks?
Well, I'm not implying anything other than they happen to.
Yeah, okay. No, you've made an excellent point there. You're not afraid to speak out. Now, is that the role of a journalist?
Well, I do it yes, of course it is. I mean, the journalist speaks out for quite different reasons. They're circulation builders. I mean, I don't think marketing always rejoices in the fact that a lot of funny people come hammering on the door wanting to murder me because I have a view about stewardesses. I mean, I really believe that all flight attendants, 9 out of 10 of them, should be got out of the place as soon as they're 30. They should keep the 10th one to be a sort of like the office dragon. You know, to supervise them and see that they look their best and not 15 pounds overweight. They can see it doesn't matter the sex of the office dragon, but that is public relations, in effect. It is.
Well, are you saying then it's public relations to get people mad at you?
No, I do it for quite different reasons. I do it because
I know one reason why you do it.
I get a lot of business from it.
Yeah, you get a lot of business. The other reason is that people remember Scott Atkinson's byline.
That awful man.
Yeah, right. They'll look him up.
Yeah. Well, that has a certain validity to it. But
but here's the point there. Let me interject here something for a minute. I want to get back to this point about cynicism and journalism. Now, you're right. Whether you're in print or broadcast journalism, you are cynical. You don't believe it. Unless I knew you and knew your reputation, I've known you for years, I would look at the first press release I got from Scott Atkinson only with cynicism. Here's another one coming down the pipe.
Mm-hmm. So you should.
Now, how can anybody then in their right mind say that a PR practitioner is a professional?
Well, you don't have to. I mean, they argue about this themselves. I mean, public relations people, including myself, is what are they? Are we professionals? What are we? I mean, I'm not really so concerned what I am. I can't really do much about changing that. I've had quite a lot of people who have tried and change me constantly. It's a really uphill struggle. I'm not going to change. I'm consistently awful, perhaps. But I enjoy what I'm doing, and most of the stuff we do is crisis management. If a company is in trouble for a product or a service or an action, the chances are that we will be considered to be on board to solve the
Ah,
problem.
now that's true. But isn't it also true that when things are going good, and it's a PR dream because there are no pitfalls. Everything's going smooth, smooth as Bristol cream. Okay, fine. That's when you can enjoy your job. And the company says, fine, that's great. You're doing a marvelous job. When things go bad, when the sales index drops, when the front headlines start mentioning the president or the company or the product and this sort of thing, that's when they run scared, and they don't want you.
Well, sometimes. I mean, all human relationships really are like a loaf of bread. They get stale in the end. Mm-hmm. And whether things are going well or going badly, the chances are that they say, look, this is not quite working out. You tend to blame the messenger. I mean, we have some wonderful examples of the messengers being blamed all the time, is that the people who are consistently critical of organizations to which they belong, with the great goodwill towards those organizations, tend to be tossed out of them.
You know, I got an insight into public relations from a friend of mine who is in PR. And he told me this. He got fired from one of his major accounts, and do you know why? Because there happened to be bad press, and they deserved bad press. And the president called him in and says, what about this? Get a retraction. And he says, how can I get a retraction? 1 and 1 does make 2.
And
he said, you want the good press, but when you get the bad press, you run scared. You've got to take your lumps as well as the bouquets. He got fired from the account for it.
Well, maybe it wasn't for him. Well, we've been certainly, I was just sort of trying to work out the numbers of times that we've been fired, which have been quite a few, but it's been at the end of a relationship, seldom at the early stages of a relationship.
Can a good PR man turn a pig's ear into pig's ear into a purse?
Well, yes, but only for a short space of time. I mean, you can fool some of the people some of the time, and not all of the people all the time, as Barnum said. But I mean, you can put I can remember actually trying to save a product which removed the grease from one's hands. And we did a promotion, a very interesting promotion, a classic in public relations, by removing the grease from swans from the Thames. And the sales of the product zoomed for about 5 minutes, but the product really practically took your hands off, which is the reason why I didn't use it. I mean, my hands in the experiments to get the thing right in the first place were very poorly, in very poor condition.
No.
So you can do it once, but you can't do it on a sustained basis.
David, just before we take a break, and then we come back in the second segment, we've got about 7 or 8 slides, and these are some of the classical Scott Atkinson only.
Well, they were just tools that we
tools,
used.
Right,
yes.
And we'll have a look at them and talk about them. But very straightforward question. I know we'll get a straightforward answer. I joke a lot with you on camera. We have a lot of fun together, and I respect you, or you wouldn't be in that chair. Have you ever turned down and walked away from a lucrative contract because you didn't like the smell of the company?
Very much so, yes.
It's tough to do, David.
No, I mean, some people actually asked us if we would be interested in representing the African National Congress, for goodness sake, who are dedicated to terrorism. And I was
the money good?
What, $1 million fee?
And you walked away from it?
Well, I mean, I don't want to be banged on the head by somebody who had for lunch.
No, but seriously, I mean, we laugh.
No way.
Yeah, but in this business, to survive, you have to have integrity, correct?
Yes, but you have to have common sense, which is absolutely synonymous. I mean, you don't get into situations with eagles don't fly with crows.
No. You know what my mother used to tell me? If you're in doubt, don't do it.
That's right. When in doubt, leave it out. It's a good journalistic maxim too.
Indeed.
But above all, that eagles don't fly with crows, and you can smell a crow a mile away.
Right. And didn't Shakespeare say just as well when he said, above all, to thine own self be true?
Oh, it was he said that, was it? I thought you initiated that.
On that note, I'll be back in a moment with my guest, David Scott Atkinson.